Hi everyone, today I want to show you a video on how to play chord inversions. And it's a simple concept, but it's really important in learning how to play chords on a piano. In my last video, I showed you some basic chords and how for any given key you can take the notes of the scale and number them. I'm going to play in G major here again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And you can build a note, or you can build a chord rather, on each one of those notes. And I showed you that the 4 most important chords in pop music are the 1, the 4, the 5, and the 6. Okay, and I showed you a song where we did a progression. There was 1, 5, 6, 4. But you remember that, and I just showed you now how I'm jumping around a lot with my hands, and the progression isn't really very smooth. So that's where inversions come into play. The way inversions work is you can start a chord, and this is a G major chord, and if the lowest note is a G, I'm just doing that 1, 3, 5 thing, this is called root position because the root note of the chord is on the bottom. But if I take that note, that root note, and I switch it from the bottom up to the top, now what we have is first inversion. Okay? So now what we can do is also just take this one, shift it up to the top, and now we've got second inversion. So once again, that's root position, first inversion, second inversion. Okay? So one of the things we can do is learn to get around from one chord to the next more smoothly. So I'm going to start with that root position G. Instead of going to D, E minor, C, I'm going to figure out how to use inversion. So G in root position. And to get around smoothly, what you need to do is look for common notes. Okay, for the G chord, I'm going to the D, so the only note in common between those two chords is this D. It's in both chords. So I'm going to keep my pinky here on the D, and I'm going to build the F sharp and the A around it. So I'm going to play this F sharp and this A. So I end up with a D chord in first, not in root position, but in first inversion. Okay, so the next chord is E minor. And there are no common notes between D major and E minor. So what I'm going to do is just shift everything up one note. Okay, and that's the closest I can get right there. So now I also end up with an E minor in first inversion. Okay, now going to C major, C, E, and G, I already have 2 of those notes here with the G and the E in E minor. So this one's kind of a no-brainer. I'm just going to take this B and move it up to the C. So now we'll have a much smoother progression. I'm going to start with root position G, go to the first inversion D, then to the first inversion E minor, and then the second inversion C major. So just listening without me talking, it sounds like this. I want to take you to one more example, and this time we're going to start with the first inversion of G instead of root position. So we're going to start here. Again, my common note going to the D major chord is going to be the D, and so I'm going to keep the D and play the F sharp and A around that. So I end up with a D chord in second inversion. Okay. Then again, I'm going to shift all the notes up for the E minor with the second inversion E minor. And then my common notes are here, so I'm just going to move up to a root position C chord. So that sounds like. So again, you can hear that it's really smooth. There are 3 things you want to consider when you're choosing which inversions to use in a chord progression. One is how to get around smoothly from one chord to the next. And that's what we just did. We tried to keep as many notes in common as we could. But then you run into the second consideration. You want to think about the melody that you're creating with these chords, because our ears naturally want to hear the top note of each chord more easily, and so it kind of creates a melody with the chords. So if I excuse me, play this G, this progression that I just played, listen to the top note. So if I sing it, it sounds like da. Not the most interesting melody. So we want to get around smoothly, but sometimes that creates a melody that's boring. So what we could do is change the inversions based on what we want to sound for the melody. Again, relying on that top note. So you can actually get pretty close to the melody in this song if you think about it, because you can go, you are all I need. So this melody is, and it was a little bit more jumping around, but it was a more interesting melody. The third thing you want to consider when choosing inversions is the range that you're playing in. If you're not careful, sometimes choosing different inversions can get you into ranges that don't really sound good. Let's say that I started out on this G in reposition like I did earlier. If I keep walking down, it wouldn't take very long before I'm starting to get into a range that sounds muddy. And again, the way our ears work is we don't distinguish between low notes as easily as we do high notes. If I play two notes way down here, and this is going to be off camera for the keyboard, that sounds just like one kind of garbled mess. But if I play those two notes way up here, it's more distinct, and you can hear that clearly that there are two different notes going on there. And when you're playing chords, the way this applies is you want to be careful about playing too low, because our ears don't distinguish between different notes as well when you get low. So consider when you're choosing inversions that you're not ending up in territory that you don't want. The same way, if you start going too high, it can start to sound a little bit corny or cheesy, and so you just want to be careful about playing up there. It can sound good for an effect, but you wouldn't want to just live up there. Okay, so those three things: getting around smoothly, creating the melody that you want, and considering the range that you're playing in will get you a long way. And when you're starting to play with chords, you have to spend a lot of time teaching your fingers how to get from one chord to the next, and taking these three things, the smoothness and the melody and the ranging into consideration. But as you improve, you'll start to do it automatically, and you get to the point where what you play is determined by your ear and what you want to hear, and that's really where when you're getting to where you want. Because it's about when you decide what sounds good. It's not about playing by the rules, but it's about knowing how to bend the rules to get the sound that you're after. That's what it's all about. So I hope this video has been helpful to you. If it has been, I invite you to visit my website, www.ourworshipsound.com, and there you can find a link to my free worship album, Draw Me In. You can also follow me on Facebook and Twitter and all that good stuff. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Thank you very much. Have a good one.